then we're going to have, oh, thank you, Leah. And then we're going to have the opportunity to hear from a few CDCs who have launched partnerships with their local hospitals. Just to give a bit of context, in my former job, I was part of the team that spearheaded the most recent update to the community benefits guidelines that came out of the Massachusetts Attorney General's office. And these are the guidelines that hospitals use to direct a portion of their annual budget towards addressing health needs in their communities. And one significant update was a renewed focus on what we refer to as social determinants of health. And I'll be talking in more detail about what social determinants of health are, but on a high level, social determinants of health are the conditions in which people live, work, and play that impact their health outcomes. And nationally and locally, there's been an increased understanding of the ways in which these social and economic conditions impact health. And the Attorney General's office, in its update to these hospital community benefits guidelines, sought to encourage hospitals to more directly address these conditions in their communities. And in that context, to the update to the guidelines, my team and I collaborated closely with a number of stakeholders, including hospitals, and got a lot of feedback about the various updates to the guidelines. Hospitals in Massachusetts were largely on board with this shift because they also recognize the impact that these conditions have on their patients and others in their community. But one reaction that we heard from hospitals is that while they recognize the importance of addressing these conditions in their communities, their expertise is in patient medical care, not in housing, education, or employment. And it's for this reason that I think is so important as hospitals start to shift towards addressing social determinants of health in their communities, that it's in their interest to partner with organizations that are already working on improving social and economic conditions in their neighborhoods. So I think that this is a really efficient use of the expertise of CDCs and can be mutually beneficial towards addressing both CDCs and hospitals' priorities. But in order for community organizations and hospitals to effectively partner, they need to understand what one another does and where they have shared priority. And this all begins through relationships. So that's kind of the background for why it felt important to publish this recent guide for CDCs to better understand hospital community benefits reports in order to better facilitate these relationships. So today we're going to spend about 20 minutes talking about the guide. We'll have some time for discussion. And then, like I said, we'll hear from some of our members who've had the opportunity to work with local hospitals. But before we dive in, I'm curious just to hear from folks what some of your existing relationships look like. So I'm just going to launch a quick poll to get a pulse check. And this isn't a test, it's just trying to get a little bit, like I said, of a pulse check. Okay, we'll take about, oh, actually, it looks like everybody's answered the poll already. I was going to give us a few more seconds, but here we are. So this is great. It looks like everyone knows who their local hospital is, so that's clearly a good first step. And it looks like more than half of folks can name an individual who works at the hospital, also great. And it looks like most people have also had a relationship with their hospital before, though not all. So that's great to get a sense of where folks are at. So I'm just going to share quickly, someone asked in the chat about a link to the report. So I'm just going to put that in the chat before I go any further. So this is a link to the report that we'll be talking about today. And keep going. Okay. So today's session is going to be a relatively high-level overview of the guide. I hope it will kind of get you interested so that you'll use this guide in the future and give you a sense of how you might use this guide and what are some of the right questions to ask to set you up to initiate or strengthen a relationship with your local hospital. So our goals for today are that you'll learn about how to use the guide to understand your local hospital's priority and the extent to which they overlap with your organization, that you'll learn about how to use the guide to learn about the extent to which your hospital has historically partnered with community organizations and to identify future opportunities for collaboration. That you'll learn how to use the guide to identify key players within the hospital and among the hospital's partners, that you'll learn how to use the guide to cater requests and conversations to the hospital's mission, priorities, identity, and role in the community, that you'll learn how to use the guide to map out next steps for engaging with your hospitals, and you'll have the chance to learn from a few CDCs who have launched successful partnerships with their local hospitals and to get a sense of what those partnerships look like and how they came about. So community benefits refer to charity care and also programmatic work that benefits the communities that are served by the hospitals. And community benefits are overseen federally by the IRS, but also on a state level, as I mentioned, by the Attorney General's office. And these are really significant investments. In fiscal year 2019, hospitals in Massachusetts invested over $753 million in community benefits. And these represent an average of 2.7% of a hospital's net patient service revenue. So they're nothing to sneeze at. And I think it's important for us to understand how they work. So I mentioned at the outset that one of the focuses of the recent update to the community benefits guidelines was on social determinants of health. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, social determinants of health are the conditions in the places in which people live, learn, work, and play that affect a wide variety of health risks and outcomes. And the update to the Attorney General's community benefits guidelines was preceded by the Massachusetts Department of Public Health's update to its determination of need regulations, which govern a hospital's episodic financial obligation to support community health when triggered by a large capital expenditure by the hospital. In the context of these updated regulations, the Department of Public Health adopted 6 new health priorities that all address different social determinants of health. And these 6 health priorities were subsequently adopted by the Attorney General's office in its update to the community benefits guidelines. Unlike determination of need obligations, which I mentioned, community benefit expenditures are not tied to hospital projects and happen every year. So I just want to highlight the social determinants of health, including social environment, built environment, housing, education, employment, and violence. And I think the first 2, social environment and built environment, are maybe a little bit less obvious than the others. So just to go into a little bit more detail, the social environment consists of a community's social conditions and cultural dynamics. So that could include social networks, social capital, integration, discrimination, trusts, and norms in a community. And the built environment refers to the physical parts of where we live and work and travel. So that could include transportation, buildings, streets, and open spaces. And I think what I really want to highlight here is that a lot of the economic development work which CDCs do is considered to address social determinants of health, whether or not we think of it as such. So I think from my perspective, in terms of better integrating health equity and community development, part of it is shifting our lens so that we recognize the ways in which the work that we do really impacts health outcomes in our communities. Oops. So I'm going to go over the various sections of a community benefits report. And as I mentioned, this is intended to be a relatively high-level overview. And I hope that you'll take a look at the guide, and I'm happy to talk through the guide at any point as you think about it and as it relates to your community. I will say I'm also not able to see the chat in this moment, but if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat and we'll have time for questions at the end. And Leah, feel free to interrupt me if there is, or anybody else, if there's anything pressing, either in terms of technology or in terms of a clarifying question that you think needs to be answered.
Ilana, one of the questions on the chat is whether you will be sharing the slides with everyone after the presentation. And I think that one is.
Yeah, thanks, Magnolia. And good to see you, Magnolia. Yes, I will be sharing these slides and we'll double check with our presenters. Hopefully we'll be able to share those slides as well, but certainly the ones you're looking at right now, I will share those. So in terms of a hospital community benefits report, it's divided into these sections that you can see on the screen: organizational information, mission and key planning documents, the program report, the expenditure report, and an optional supplement. And I'm going to go into a little bit of detail about each of these. So the organizational information lists basic information about the hospital and its community benefits work. And the things that I think are the most important to look out for in this section are: where is there overlap with your organization's service area geographically? And also, who is the community benefits contact? And the community benefits contact could be somebody in government relations. It could be a social worker. It could be somebody in a different department. And I think that that's really important because that can impact how you frame a conversation with this person and can also indicate the amount of authority that the person in that position holds. The next section is the mission and the key planning documents. And this includes the hospital's community benefits mission statement and a list of target populations, which could include like an age demographic, like children or older adults, or it could include people with specific needs, like people who are experiencing substance use disorders or people who are experiencing homelessness. This section also includes the link to the hospital's latest community health needs assessment. And the community health needs assessment is really crucial because that is what the community benefits program are based on. And that can give you a good sense of the hospital's identified priorities in their community. This section also has a link to the hospital's latest implementation strategy. And that is a document that describes how the community benefits programs aim to address identified needs in the community health needs assessment, and can also give insight into how the hospital envisions acting on those priorities that they identified in the community health needs assessment, which, by the way, I might refer to as the CHNA, the Community Health Needs Assessment. This section also has a hospital self-assessment, and the hospital self-assessment is an opportunity for the hospital to describe the extent to which it views itself as having addressed social determinants of health, having engaged with the community in its community benefits planning process, and how it has addressed health equity in the context of its community benefits programs. The self-assessment gives you more insight into the hospital's priorities and commitments to addressing health equity in its communities, and it can also be useful for identifying overlapping interests. The self-assessment also lists the members of the hospital's Community Benefits Advisory Committee, as well as community organizations that are engaged in the community benefits process. There are a few things that I think are important to note in this section. It's an opportunity to note what are the top health priorities that are indicated in the community health needs assessment, in the implementation strategy, and the self-assessment, and to take note of where these priorities identify with your organization's mission or priorities. It's also an opportunity to note if the hospital collaborated with other hospitals, and if so, who they collaborated with. It's also an opportunity to note about when the hospital last completed its CHNA or implementation strategy. The hospital is obligated by the IRS to complete its community health needs assessment every 3 years. So that can give you a sense of where in the process the hospital is to publish its next community health needs assessment, because the community health needs assessment is a key area where there could be opportunity to get involved. You also might want to note individuals or organizations that are represented on the Community Benefits Advisory Committee or who are listed on the self-assessment, because you might be able to identify some gaps in representation that could indicate a future opportunity for partnership with your organization. So this next part, the program report, is, I would say, the bulk of the community benefits report. And in it, The hospital separately lists each community benefits program and includes the program name, the type of program, a description of the program, contact information, goals, target population, and program partners. It also indicates which of the Health and Human Services focus issues are addressed by the program. And these focus issues include chronic disease, substance use, housing and homelessness, and mental illness and mental health. For each program, the hospital will also indicate if it addresses any of the social determinants of health that we discussed previously. So in this section, I think it's important to look for programs that overlap with the work that your organization does. Again, to note if there are any gaps in the program work. To look at the list of community partners and see if there are any that you know or are familiar with. And also to identify, are there priorities that were listed in the community health needs assessment that don't have a clearly associated program in the program report, because that also might indicate an opportunity for future collaboration. The next section of the report is the expenditures section, and this provides the total community benefits expenditures by the hospital, and it also breaks down the expenditures in a number of ways. It will break down the expenditures according to program type, which are divided into direct clinical services, community clinical linkages, total population or community-wide interventions, or infrastructure to support collaboration. So I'm not going to go into all the detail about what each of those means, but I will say that I think from the CDC perspective, the one to pay most attention to is the total population or community-wide interventions. Those are the ones that are most likely to address social determinants of health, and I think most relevant to the work that CDCs do. Within the expenditures by program type, the hospital also will detail a subtotal that's provided to outside organizations. And this number can be helpful to better understand the extent to which the hospital is already funding outside organizations to assist with their work in their communities. And lastly, the hospital has an opportunity to include an optional supplement. So this is an opportunity for a hospital to describe how it functions as a purchaser, employer, and investment in the community, apart from what's already been described in the community benefits report. And I think that this section is helpful because it can give additional insight into the role that the hospital sees itself as playing in relation to its surrounding community. And it can also be really helpful for framing a conversation with or an ask of the hospital. So in a few minutes, we're going to go on to hear about a few examples of partnerships, but I'd love to take a few minutes for questions and also to hear about if there's anything that resonated with you or that surprised you about this work, or any questions that you have, but also how you might envision using some of this information in the future. I'm going to just stop the share so we can all see each other a little better.
I'll just jump in. I think this has been really helpful, Alana. Thank you. My biggest thing, I think we at Madison Park already have a partnership with Boston Medical Center, but for me, I really just am looking at the community health needs assessment and wondering, how much of our work is based on that, since BMC is right around the corner. So that's just something that's percolating for me, is wanting to look at what Chinaz have been held in this area and how our work is being done based on that.
Great. Yeah, and the Boston area is of particular interest because for the first time a few years ago, several Boston hospitals, including Boston Medical Center, have been working on a joint community health needs assessment, though many of the hospitals are also doing their own separate ones. So there's a lot to dig into there.
And Chavella, just so you know, we've been working with Madison Park for maybe 2 decades, and a lot of the work at Madison Park is connected to the community benefits and also the needs assessment work. And we work directly with Javier in your team. and Leslie. So some of that work you will see there, and it's a long relationship that we've had.
Yes. Well, nice to meet you, Magnolia. I did
Nice
know
to
that,
meet you.
and I just haven't been in those conversations. So I'm like, I just.
Yeah.
And Magnolia, do you mind just saying where you're from?
Absolutely. Magnolia Contreras, Dana-Farber Cancer Institute. And I am the Vice President for Community Health and Community Benefits.
Thanks. And I think, you bring up an important point, which is both of you, Chavella and Magnolia, that, some of the time these relationships exist, but not everybody on staff necessarily is familiar with them, because if you don't have that personal relationship or that programmatic relationship, you might not understand the extent. So some of this is, in addition to understanding a bit more about your local hospitals, it's also about understanding your own organization and what different relationships exist that you may not know about and that you might be able to work with.
If I could just press on that a little bit, Ilana,
Yeah.
Because general population has no idea what community benefits offices are. They don't know that they exist. They don't know anything about it. So I want to credit Ilana for having this training, because it is important that we amplify and inform the community about the work that's done in our offices, because that's really where a lot of the public health work gets done out of our hospital institutions. But they're not an office that you have to dig for it, and you have to know how to what you're looking for in order to find it. And the reality is that many times our offices are not only small in terms of where they land, right, like the office size, but they're also tiny in terms of staffing, in terms of resources that get funded to do this important work. And the DON process, the community benefit process, these needs assessment process have really opened up the opportunity for many of our small community benefits offices to come together in a collaborative as hospitals. And you'll find that we have that shared mission of focusing on the needs of our priority communities, those important target populations that we need to serve, those medically underserved communities. And we are the voice of those communities in our institutions to ensure that they are provided with the services that they need. And so I share that with you because you will find that all these regulations exist, and we work really hard to meet all of those regulations and to submit the reports and to make sure that we provide the services, but general population hardly ever knows about it. And so you are getting an opportunity to say, these reports are out there, let me look at them, let me see how the Boston, in particular, Boston landscape is, and to figure out what of the priorities that as a collective we've identified, and where do some of the work and the mission of your own organizations fit, and to figure out where you would sit at the table, inform some of those processes. And I think that's important. That's an important value add, and housing is one of the priority areas across the board for all of our institutions through the collaborative. And then some other healthcare delivery components as well. So I just wanted to give you that broader context for where we sit in our organizations and how you would find us. And I think my colleague John from Boston Children's wants to add, I hope, and correct me if I said anything.
No, just wanted to second what you said and thank you, Ilana, for the opportunity to join. And I want to lavish much praise on you for making a somewhat arcane process, even to hospitals, understandable to a broader network. So thank you much for what you're doing. I also wanted to congratulate our friends at Madison Park, because they figured this out, because Children's is also coordinating with them around some youth development work. So there are resources out there that folks can and should be tapping into. And this is I'm finding this I began my a professional career in CDC land, not Centers for Disease Control, but Community Development Corporation. I worked at EBA in the South End on Viviendas 2. And now at the hospital, and beginning to feel like my early career and my current career have come full circle, and are spending a lot of time working on some of the same things that I was doing in CDC world, but at a hospital. So I think you folks find yourself at a fairly unique point in hospitals history, where we are discovering the social determinants of health and trying to play a role there.
Thanks so much, John and Magnolia, for those perspectives. And I think, really highlighting the extent to which some of this stuff is tough to get your mind around. And so I largely see my job as it relates to CDC as helping to facilitate that. And that was kind of the point of putting together this guide. And just to say that I'm really happy to talk to anybody individually to work through the guide together, or to answer questions, or just to be a thought partner in how to either initiate or strengthen some of these relationships. And as you can see from Magnolia and from John's comments, every hospital is different, but we certainly have a lot of really wonderful hospital partners in the room, and I'm happy to help to facilitate connections as best as possible. And I think, they're also happy to be thought partners in some of this work. So I'm just, in the interest of time, going to turn it over to our presenters, and then we're going to have 3 presenters today, and then at the end we will have an opportunity for questions and discussion. So we're going to have, first up is, we're going from east to west today. So we're having Paola Liendo from JPNDC. Paola is the manager of JPNDC's Family Prosperity Services, and is going to be talking about their Financial Health Matters program, which is a collaboration with Boston Children's Hospital. Then after Paola speaks, we'll turn it over to Yvette Dyson, who's the Executive Director of Worcester Common Ground, and who's going to be talking about a partnership with UMass Memorial Medical Center to support a rooftop greenhouse on the roof of one of their buildings. And then we'll be turning it to Colleen Lovelace, who's the Executive Director of Revitalize CDC in Springfield. And we'll be talking about their DASH program, which is a partnership with Bay State Health to improve housing conditions and to perform assessments and interventions for adults and children with asthma, and to make home improvements that allow seniors to safely remain in their homes. So with that, I will turn it over to Paola. And Paola, I'm not remembering off the top of my head if you wanted to, hopefully you should have screen sharing permissions, or if let me know if you would like me or Leah to share your slides.
No, I can share my screen, no worries. And hi, John, how are you? Hi, everybody. So hope you can see my screen. Yes, okay. So hello, everybody. My name is Paola Liendo, and I work for JPNDC. Our program, it's called Family Prosperity Services, and we are part of the Economic Prosperity Services Department at the CDC. So JPNDC is a CDC in Boston. We are located in Jamaica Plain, Jamaica Plain. And our mission is to transform the lives and amplify the voices of Boston residents who have been excluded from prosperity by an equitable and economic system. We develop affordable housing, but we also have a number of programs to serve the community. We have basically 3 major programs outside of the housing development and the community organizing, that are small business services, childcare, and the economic prosperity, that it's financial and career coaching. The Financial Health Matters that we have been partnering for the last 3 years with Boston Children's Hospital, and it's part of the Family Prosperity Services, where we offer family financial skills training, where people learn about finances and how to improve their money management. financial coaching. That is where the magic happens, as we call it, because it's where we go hands-on on the work that we do with the clients. Is working one-on-one to help people achieve their own financial goals. We also offer career coaching that has two components: the job readiness training and the one-on-one career coaching as well, to help them achieve their education and career goals, and case management for all our clients. Our partnership with Boston Children's Hospital started way before this 3-year grant that we received. We had a long-standing relationship with Martha Elliott, that it's a community health center in Jamaica Plain. And the way that this relationship started, it was very organically. So we reached out to their community health navigators, and to inform them about the services that we provided. When we were establishing the relationship, we figured out that a lot of the clients that we were serving were parents of the children that were being served by this health center, and the families needed the services that we were offering. At the very beginning, Martha Elliott Health Center had a project about reducing homelessness, and to be more hands-on on helping their families to achieve, to be able to get into more stable housing. And the way that we started this, it was to, they also identified that once they got their vouchers, they were able to find housing and transition from shelter to an apartment. Then there was a lot of people who were not able to keep their apartment because they didn't have any money management skills. Their budgeting was way off chart. They were not used to be paying rent, to paying utilities, so they were getting behind on their bills. So at the same time that they were giving the workshops about how to apply for housing and start to working on them in that area, we started to work with the same families on the money management skills and to improve their credit so they could have access to better housing. So that's how this partnership started, and also to provide post-housing placement support. And in this case, it's also helping people to find jobs that allow them to be on top of their finances, to have the income to be on top of their finances. Some of the benefits that we have seen from this partnership, it was first to formalize the work that we were already doing and get funded for that, but also expand the reach of our work through the direct client referrals. We were able to set up a system where staff at Martha Elliott and also to the Central Children's Hospital, they could refer their families directly to us, and our team will follow up with them in 48 hours. So instead of just giving them information about where they can get help, it was like a soft referral, a warm referral. So and we became like a trusted partner. So the families knew that they could trust us on this. Speaking about money, talking about bad credit is not easy. Sometimes it has a lot of negative connotations on it, negative feelings. So the fact that they were able to talk on behalf of us and the way that we approach this work, then it was a big win for us. We were able to identify also an overlapping population and their needs and work towards an integrated approach. Like Alana mentioned, the hospitals do an amazing work and the health centers do an amazing work to get people connected to Mass Health, to SNAP, to all these benefits, but they don't have sometimes the resources to do the intense one-on-one work that we do on other areas like finances and job readiness, for example. And another benefit it was to be included in all other hospital networks or bigger networks that include multiple hospitals that are working to address the social determinants of health, that also open new doors for us to get new funding. I don't know if there is any questions.
Thanks so much, Paula. And I think we actually do have time if there's maybe one question, and then we'll move over to Yvette. Though also happy to have questions and discussion at the end. Okay, so let's move on to Yvette's presentation. Thank you so much, Paula. I was familiar, but also learned a lot of new things even in your presentation. So really appreciate that. And as Shavella said, I appreciate a lot of like the framing that you put into that. So thank you. So Yvette, it's off to you. Let me know if you want to share or if you would like me to share.
You can share if you want.
Great. Leah, if you have those ready to go, you can share, but otherwise I'm happy to.
Yeah, I can do it. Can everyone see PowerPoint?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
So are we ready?
Yeah, go for it, Yvette. Thank you.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. It's so interesting to hear this whole footprint you've laid out to the process of getting involved with hospitals, because I think I kind of finagled my way through this, and having had this sort of pathway, I probably would have been more successful. But the way that I started, just so that folks who aren't connected to hospitals, I'm part of the steering committee for the CHIP in Worcester. And in Worcester, we only have one CHIP, Community Health Investment Plan for the city. And that is worked from this coalition called the Coalition for a Healthy Greater Worcester. So being on that steering committee, which UMass Memorial is very much a part of, I started to meet folks who were from UMass, and it was really just that connection that drove them to have a lot of interest in our work. And social determinants of health is a constant drive for UMass Memorial, especially with our the difficult neighborhoods that we serve in Worcester, and not just Worcester Common Ground, but the other CDCs as well. So UMass not only helped us with this rooftop garden, but they made us a part of what's called their anchor mission. And I'm just mentioning this because it's really an amazing program. They are helping us, they're giving us effectively a line of credit, and it allows me to have quick cash to buy vacant properties so that we can create home ownership. And most recently on a call, this is how incredible they are, they're actually going to fund the construction, so I don't have to go to a bank. And we're really trying hard to crank out home ownership in our neighborhood, because it is the best way for folks to build equity. And it is just a really large part of Worcester Common Ground's mission. So we do rental housing like you see in front of you, which is our latest and greatest, 126 Chandler Street. It's 31 units of housing, affordable housing. We have a large community space, and we have a new store location. A tenant of ours, Horizon Acupuncture, who is housed across the street, is moving into the new building and increasing his treatment rooms from 2 to 4. And so he's very excited about that. And we were able to do the entire build out for him, which we know is pretty unheard of. but he's going to have a really successful business there. And UMass loves affordable housing because the folks that they hire, and they're the biggest employer of Worcester, are the backbone of this neighborhood. So they need to be housed in Worcester and have access to healthy living spaces. So the greenhouse for them was a perfect fit in that they want to see food being produced for people who are living in this building. And, you know, we've just finished the building, so we haven't figured out all of our programming. If we could go to the next slide, or can I do that? Well, this is how it started. It's crazy to build a greenhouse, especially on a roof. I don't recommend it. But we got through it. But, you know, as the CDC, and because we had this thought, it became separate from the contractor's responsibility. So hiring a crane and finding the greenhouse and getting it all together and put on the building was really something. So if you want to go to the next slide. This is the back side of the building, and that was just when it was being framed up. We hired a separate contractor to do this framing, and it'll have heating, air conditioning. It's a year-round gardening place for folks. We are told we're going to be able to cultivate somewhere between 2,500 pounds of produce every 6 weeks. The hydroponics are very fast, and we just started piloting a whole thing of seeds, and they're all starting to sprout, and then you plant them into these long plastic holders that have holes in them, and the water runs in between all of these, and they just grow out of these holes. It's really amazing. So if you want to go to the next slide. That's what I was trying to describe. So these are the hydroponics themselves, and there are those buckets. They're called beta buckets, and those are for larger plants. So you can do beans and tomatoes and eggplant and different things in the beta buckets. And then the NTF system, which is the elongated pieces, those are more for greens and kale and whatever folks want to grow in there. So this, I just love this photo because it's from inside the neighborhood across the street, and the greenhouse sits up there snuggled away, and just kind of gives you an idea of the fabric of how this is located within a neighborhood, yet on a busy street. If you want to go to the next. And again, this building, this was a razor factory a long time ago. It's not a historic building, but we did restore this and added a new building next to it. So we decided that the greenhouse would be perfectly located on the older building. We had to do a lot of steel framing in the ceiling of the 4th floor to ensure that, you know, this was all stable for the long haul. But our plan is to work with a really great group called Together We Eat. And they do a lot of pilot programs with hydroponics throughout the city. And we've already set all the hydroponics up and started the seeds. And hopefully when residents move in on December 1st, they can come into this space, which is open to them all day or night, and learn how to do hydroponic farming. We're going to have a big seminar in the community room to really teach people how to do this and to be able to create food. Is that the last one? Sorry. It is. Okay. So yes, UMass, this was right up their alley. They were really interested in helping us to make this happen. We also raised a lot of other money through the Health Activation Fund and the TD Bank Housing for Everyone Fund, all those various grants that we all apply for. So we were fortunate to get this funded. It's about 256,000, I would say, to build this with all the various components. We're lucky to have this nonprofit working with us to help grow all of this, because Lord knows I don't know how to do all of that myself. And we're going to have a intern from Worcester State University who's a health student, and she is bilingual and will be working directly with our residents during the spring semester and connecting them with this greenhouse. Are there any questions? I think there were questions. I couldn't talk and read them at the same time.
I'm just in the comments fangirling because I really love what's happening in Worcester, Yvette. I just think, you know, you all are really covering a lot of the social determinants of health just in this one project. So yeah, just
Thank you so
kudos
much.
to you. I know it's been a lot of work, but this is really amazing.
You know, I finally went in there today because I'm missing my project meeting, which I really don't mind. But I finally got some updated photos because as I was putting this together, I was like, oh gosh, these are old. So my apologies for that, but it prompted me to get in there before people move in to get new photos.
Thanks so much, Yvette, for that. And I think the way you opened and kind of describing the diversity of the ways in which UMass Memorial is both connected to Worcester Common Ground, but also connected to the broader Worcester community, and the idea that the housing that you're building is where their employees are living, that there's really a vested interest on their part, and that these types of partnerships are both natural and necessary, and also can really take a lot of different forms. So thank you and congratulations on that great work.
Thank you.
So I think we can turn it over to Colleen, and Colleen, whenever you want your video, we have that ready for you. So just let me know. Colleen, you are muted though.
Okay, sorry about that. All right, I'll be sharing a flyer in just a minute, and then I'll cue you up for the video when we're ready for that. But good morning, everybody. I'm Colleen Lovelace at Revitalize CDC, and a lot of our team are here on the call today, or the meeting today. We have Ethel Griffin, we have Chelsea McGrath, we have Rachel Monroe, Carmen Pagan, and Brenna Monroe. And all or many are Healthy Homes Assessors certification, CAP certification, which is Certified Aging in Place Specialists, and or community health workers, or combination thereof. So we've got quite a bit of depth as far as capacity. And our organization's been in Springfield since 1992. We focus on working on existing homes for homeowners and families, and existing rental units where people are living in, and we repair and modify and rehabilitate those units. So we do not get involved with the creation of new units. We're working on providing those types of repairs so that they can remain safe in their homes. So back in about 2010, 2011, I really had a vision of working with Bay State Health, and especially with people that suffer from asthma, COPD, or people that are in need of aging in place or trip and fall hazards prevention. Because we were receiving calls from the hospitals and from the insurance company saying, hey, we've got a patient or a client that needs this type of intervention in their home in order to come home, maybe from a rehab center, for example. And then many of you might remember in 2011, we had a series of EF3 tornadoes, and that kind of took us off track for a few years. Fast forward to about 2015, I was at a meeting held by Wayfinders in Springfield, and it was hosted by CHAPA, which many of you, I'm sure, are familiar with. And they were just starting to talk about health and housing, and breaking down those silos and how we might work together. And in that room was Dr. Frank Robinson, and he was in the community relations department at Bay State, and also Sarita Hudson, and she's the director of programs at the Public Health Institute of Western Massachusetts. And we were already doing this type of work, like, for instance, mold remediation, pest control, accessible ramps, grab bars, that type of work. And it just wasn't a formalized referral collaborative process. We were all working independently and not together. And as we know, working together, we can do so much more. They applied for a technical assistance grant from the Green and Healthy Homes Initiative that really helped us set up this whole process and our collaborative. They're based out of Baltimore, Maryland, but they're a national network. And as a result of that, and also the community investment tax credit, we were awarded $250,000 back in, I think it was 2016 or 2017, for capacity building to start up the asthma program with a certified healthy homes assessor. So one of the reasons also that we received the 250,000 was because also for our tax credits, wayfinders also received tax credits of provided that they were awarded. So combined, Bay State received $250,000 back for a $500,000 two grants there. And they use that for seed money at Common Capital for startup for minority and low income businesses. So it really had a significant impact. We've have significantly grown since that time. We're working with Bay State, but we're also working with other healthcare organizations like Holyoke Medical Center, Mercy, Behavioral Health Network, and the Mental Health Association. So our asthma and COPD work, which I'll share this with you, this is our flyer, all comes under our DASH program, which the acronym is for a doorway to an accessible, safe, and healthy home. And with that is again, the asthma and COPD interventions. We provide education. We work with the community health workers at the hospitals, or we provide our own community health workers to provide the educational piece. We have assessors go in and assess for structural things in the home that will trigger asthma. We might remove carpeting and replace with flooring. We provide healthy home supplies like HEPA vacs and air purifiers and things along those lines. We then expanded, of course, during COVID, we started providing these healthy home supplies for people under quarantine at home to help prevent the spread of the virus, the green cleaning supplies and things of that nature. And we also discovered, of course, that many of you I'm sure have, people were food insecure. So we were picking up food from the food banks. And that work grew, and we received a contract last year. We started in 2020 outside of the community benefits portion of this, where Mass Health has their flexible services program. So they are supporting our asthma, home interventions, education, and supply program year round. They also awarded us a contract, again, through Bay State's accountable care organizations, a COVID emergency response program last year with home supplies and also food from the food bank. So we served 1,200 households in November, December alone last year. And then this year, we've been also awarded a nutrition program through Bay State's the Be Healthy Partnership and the Flexible Services program through Mass Health on a nutrition program. So we now have 2 dietitians on our staff that are providing education for people with diabetes. They're receiving the healthy home supplies. They're receiving 10 weeks of healthy food deliveries, as well as counseling from the dietitians. So the program has expanded quite a bit. I mean, the contracts we have with asthma and COPD and COVID and the nutrition program are almost $2 million per year. So we've really grown significantly outside of just the community benefits area. I serve on the Community Benefits Advisory Council for Bay State, and the focus, as Alana mentioned, the last 2 years, the CBAC has focused on education, and we really weren't a good fit, even though we are providing educational services specifically for the asthma program to help eliminate triggers in the home. But we have found through the Mass Health Flexible Services Program that that has really helped us grow and be able to serve more individuals in Western Massachusetts. And then Alana, you have a video we submitted a few years ago about our asthma program. It's really brief. It's about 3 minutes. And it can kind of demonstrate what our work has been like collaborating with Bay State Health.
I have two girls. Adriana's 4 and Kaylee 1. When they're separated from each other, it's like, oh my God, where were you all day? They love each other. They're crazy about each other. My girls have asthma, both of them, especially my 1-year-old. Since she was 3 months old, we were in and out of the hospital almost every week. My 4-year-old, if we were lucky, we would go every 2 weeks, depending on how difficult it was for her to breathe. It was like nerve-wracking. It's like emotional. I didn't know what to do. It's like, okay, who can help me with this?
Our asthma rates in Springfield are incredibly high when you look at how many people show up in the emergency department and mortality rates. But the Pioneer Valley Asthma Coalition, over the past 5 years, we've been working on a healthy home strategy where you get to the root cause of what is exacerbating asthma. And there are things, quite frankly, that are in the home environment. And it's things like mold, or it's a family member smoking, or it's chlorine-based cleaning products. And all of those types of things can exacerbate asthma, and they can also be mitigated. If you can eyeball an environment now for your children and try to take care of that or mitigate that immediately, that's incredibly empowering.
We had mold. Revitalize took the mold out from the bathroom closet and the fan in the bathroom. They fixed up the stairways because I guess it was a safety hazard for the kids. They didn't have any railings. And the vent to the dryer, they fixed that too because I guess the lint triggers it too. The asthma program gave me information on what I can do to better their breathing.
If you have a group like Revitalize CDC that already has decades of experience remediating and rebuilding homes, they just came with a wealth of knowledge, contacts, and built-in relationships, and we couldn't do it without them. We've been able to pull together healthcare and municipal government to roll out a solid intervention.
We have 2 CDCs that were awarded grants for work they're doing in this intersection of health and housing. Here, take advantage of a community investment tax credit, which means I now can grow my pot of investment money to make more investments. Win-win for the hospital and for the community.
It has helped. There's not as many ER runs or missing school because they're not feeling good or they can't breathe. I'm just pushing them forward. You can do better and you can do whatever you put your mind to. Thank you. I appreciate all the help you guys given me.
Thank you.
Thank you. Little internet hiccups there, but I think everyone pretty much got the gist of the video. And if anybody has any questions, or we can, Alana, I'm not sure if you just want to open up questions to everybody.
Sure, yeah. Happy to take any specific questions for Colleen's presentation, or also happy to have any general discussion or questions based on all the presentations. And I love that video. I've seen it so many times and I always enjoy watching it again. So it's really great description of your great work.
Thank you.
So I'm curious from other folks in the room who are associated with other organizations, if either you want to share anything about relationships that you have or any thoughts about forming these relationships. I see we have a hand from Alice. So Alice, why don't you go ahead?
Hi, good morning. I'm on the phone. but I love seeing the pictures of all you all. My question really is for you, Alana. As part of your work and initiative at MACDC, is there a part of the plan to do peer-to-peer training? So where you're matching up the speakers you have today and these experts? I mean, they're all working, 2 or 3 jobs already, but is there a way that you're going to match them up with requests from other CDC members?
That's a
So
great-
you spread that knowledge?
Great idea and great question. So we do have the most formal way we have for our CDC members to connect with one another is through our Health Equity Committee, which is a committee which many people in this Zoom room are a part of, that's open to all of our members. And it's an opportunity both to learn from outside experts, but also to connect peer-to-peer in regard to learning of this type and to learn in order to do one's own programs in this area. So that's, I'd say, the most formal way, but we don't have a formal, matchmaking service, but I love that idea. And I do think that a lot of conversations certainly happen informally. Certainly if I'm talking to somebody and they're interested in starting a program and I know of one that sounds, familiar, then I very often will facilitate introductions, whether it's about hospital connections or about other health equity work. So that certainly happens informally. And yeah, I think that's a great idea to formalize that process a little bit more. I think, it's interesting because as we saw with Colleen and Yvette and Paola's presentation, we say at MACDC, when you've seen one CDC, you've seen one CDC. Each of your work is so different from one another. And that's certainly not to say that there is not a lot to be learned from one another, but also that, I think some of these conversations end up being, it's kind of a long game in terms of identifying some of the connections and facilitating some of that work. But I love that idea.
Very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Alice. Any other questions or thoughts to share? Anything that particularly resonated from any of the presentations or any questions that you have, clarifying questions or otherwise?
I'm just curious, Alana, if this presentation is one, Magnolia mentioned earlier that, folks in the industry are familiar with community benefits and how hospitals have community benefits available. Just wondering if you would be, if this is something that could be presented to the general public, to residents that we work with. Just wondering that.
So in terms of kind of an intro to what community benefits are and the guide and thoughts for how to connect with a local hospital, that type of thing?
Yes.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I would love to talk offline about that. I think to the extent that folks are interested. I mean, one thing that I found also echoing Magnolia's experience internally at the hospital was, working on community benefits from the perspective of the Attorney General's office is, we did so much work to make these reports publicly available, but in certain ways they are very kind of hard to discern and people don't know about them. And so I think, there's only so much, right? Like hospitals are obligated by the IRS to submit these reports. It's actually optional in Massachusetts, though the vast majority of hospitals in Massachusetts do submit their reports to the Attorney General's office. But, there's such a variety in terms of, we're hearing some really high quality programs. There are also programs that are much more, I'd say, like surface level type programs, more like writing a check or whatever else. And I think the extent to which I think there needs to be, public understanding and public accountability that these investments are really made in a really thoughtful way, as many of them are. But I think, there's even more room and more room to move the investments more upstream in terms of social determinants of health. So I think it's important that folks from a CDC perspective have as much of an understanding as they want to have, but also like you're bringing up, Shavella, that also community members can be exposed and can understand and can know how to get connected and involved.
Yes, thank you. And mainly just, we host a workshop around Article 80, and that's something that's new for residents. And then just to, just provide some depth into, the community benefits and the different variations of them.
Yeah.
And ways to access them.
Yeah. Great. Well, if people have more questions, feel free to jump in, but I'm hoping to see many of you tomorrow at our annual meeting, either in person, I'll be there in person, or virtually on the screen. And also just to reiterate that really I'm here to work with all of you. So I'm really happy to find some time to talk offline, whether it's working through the guide together, or being a thought partner, or making some connections with other CDCs, or thinking about how to get the word out about some of these programs, whether it's to community residents, as we just talked about, or whether it's thinking together with your board or board members. There are lots of different possibilities, and happy to brainstorm together. I think in addition to the diversity of projects that we just saw, we also really learned that there's a lot of different ways to start these conversations and to get your foot in the door. And there's not really one right way to do this. So sometimes it takes a bit of creativity. I also I'll put my email address in the chat if folks don't have it. And also want to thank, it looks like our hospital partners are no longer on the line, though maybe some of them will see this recording, but to really thank the hospital partners for coming and for being connected. And also some folks know that this year we launched a Healthy Communities Fund as part of our annual meeting, in which several hospitals were committed to being gold sponsors of the annual meeting to help to support our health equity work in particular. So really grateful to have them as partners in this work. And so thanks again, everybody, and please do be in touch. And I hope everybody has a great rest of your day. And thank you again to our presenters, especially. Take care.
Thank you.
Everyone.